Good day, everybody! It is Calxiyn and Hunter here. If you guys enjoyed this video, remember to become patrons over on Patreon to support the channel, follow us on social media, and of course, subscribe. Now everybody sound your gaydars because we have another video about a confirmed queer RWBY character, alright? We had Ilya, we had Saffron and Tara, and then Coco in the RWBY After the Fall novel, but Volume 7 has given us a brand new gay for our hearts.
Sure.
Yes.
I mean, not actually gay. I mean, they might be a lesbian. We don't know this, but what we do know is they're trans.
That's my canon idea, is everybody in the Happy Huntresses is in love with Robin.
Yes, and some variety of not straight.
Exactly. That is my harem idea. So, let's show you guys the tweet. Alright, and this is Kaden Jensen, and she's the voice actress for May Marigold. And, okay, so we had, I guess a Twitter theory, like, we didn't make a video about it, but we were like,
we talked about it in the
analysis. May Marigold has the same last name as Henry Marigold, so they must be related. Like, we were thinking more like sister,
yes.
But they have confirmed that it is cousin.
Marigold's cousin.
Yes, RWBY has confirmed. And so that's interesting. But Kaden also said that May Marigold is the very first on-screen trans character for RWBY, and you guys can see the concept art. I really like the ponytail. Like, I like the wrap. Like, in the very end, but at the same time, I'm like, wow, like, she's just so pretty with the ponytail. Like, I don't know, I'm a sucker for the A and B concept art. I don't know why.
I've never seen armored garter straps like what is on B.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's unique.
But yeah, I like to see all the different character designs, but then, of course, you have sort of the final...
So we kind of guessed this was happening based off of, I guess, a precedent set by RWBY that... the character shares the same gender as the, I guess, voice actor or actress.
Yeah, because you had First Mate and their voice actor saying that Mate was non-binary because they were also non-binary, I believe. And so there has been that sort of past precedent. So that's a tweet, that's a confirmation. What I think is sort of funny about this is that at the beginning of the volume, or I guess when the new concept art was getting revealed, a lot of people thought that Nora was going to turn out to be trans, and we actually made a video on that too.
Yes.
Which I guess if May is the first on-screen trans character, that kind of confirms that Nora isn't, but at the same time, that would be a spoiler. So, you know, we won't discount that right away, because people did like the tweets. Like, people that worked at Rooster Teeth liked the tweets, and I'm not saying liking tweets is confirmation. But you think somebody would, like, eventually correct people because it was a big theory? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you always get, like, is Crow RWBY's dad? No. Right? And so when things get out of control in terms of theorizing, they tend to sort of correct people and give people the right answer. And in this case, lots of people were theorizing, including us, that they, May and Henry were related. But, you know, we were thinking more like sister. But she was a sister, right?
Sister, brother, cousins. I mean, there's always...
Cousins is fine.
There's always a gay cousin, you know?
I'm just saying.
And if you're not the gay... Or if you don't have a gay cousin, you are likely the gay cousin, and May's the gay cousin.
I'm the gay cousin.
So am I.
And so, yeah. So that is where we are at with that. So I hope that the Nora people are happy, though, just because, you know... even though I understand why people would want Nora, it's still nice to see representation in other characters, and this does open up the door to them doing it more, which I think is good. In terms of the response, I was wrong, okay? I thought that Reddit was going to be a toxic cesspool of garbage, but they were actually pretty supportive, and they were yelling at people that weren't. So good on you, Reddit. And Twitter, the tweets under her
Twitter's
tweet,
also a garbage fire. Some of those, or most of them, are very positive, but then again, if you're going to follow Kaden, who is trans herself, presumably you would...
But then things get retweeted, and then it's like, you know, sometimes the people that other people follow, you know.
But generally speaking, it was very positive. Although there was like there was a handful of, I guess, questionable comments and ideas being pressed out there. Not all of them necessarily overtly mean-spirited. I mean, some are. Some are just like, who gives a shit? And it's like, well, fucking, I don't... I saw a few others that I kind of would dispute. There was this is just like the J.K. Rowling method.
Yeah.
Because famously...
Dumbledore is gay.
Dumbledore is gay, even though he's never shown to be gay in the novels, and it's just what she said years later in a public forum in a Q&A. I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think that May is...
I don't think this is is a J.K. Rowling
I guess for
you know
two
what
things.
I mean? Because first of all, May is a brand new character who
Yeah.
literally just happened. This isn't like Rooster Teeth is like in some sort of dumpster fire. They're trying to save their image 3 years later, and they're like, but May was trans. You know what I mean? Trying to rescue themselves, if that makes sense.
Because I don't think a lot of people go after, now at least, Rooster Teeth for not having a lot of like queer representation, because I mean there's been a lot. There's been Coco, there's been Ilia, there's been Scarlet, there's likely going to be Blake and Yang, basically confirmed to be Blake and Yang at
Saffron and Tara.
And Saffron
Did I say that already?
We might have, who knows. They get twice because they're lovely. Point is that currently they're actually doing, I would say, okay in terms of representation. J.K. Rowling did that because everyone was trashing her books for being, whiter than Tilda Swinton in a snowstorm fighting a Yeti.
So yeah, that is also what I would say. The other thing sort of is like people seem to have an issue with them not saying it in the show. But two things to that. First thing is, listen, we still have the dinner party, which Henry may be at. We don't know what he's gonna say, and like, I hope he gets punched in the face. I hope Weiss puts a fist in his mouth. And so there's that on that. Robin probably won't be at the dinner party, though. I doubt that the Happy Hunteresses would be there. You know what I mean. And so there's that, but also like they've never actually said it in the show. You know what I mean? They've like heavily implied it, but Ilia wasn't like, hello, Blake, I am a lesbian. You know what I mean? Nobody talks like that. Nobody says that stuff. And so with Ilia, it's very apparent, right? Because she's like, I wanted you to look at me the same way you looked at Adam. Like, clearly, we all understand that here, like, right? There's Saffron and Tara, which is obviously, like, they aren't just roommates, okay? And your aunt and her roommate aren't just roommates either, right? And so there's that.
With Coco, they pretty explicitly say that she's, like, a lady killer.
Yeah, and, like, she wants to fuck Glinda, so I'm pretty sure that that's pretty obvious.
She wants to fuck a couple people in that book.
And could they do better with the male gay representation? Yes. But does the show mostly focus on girls?
Yes.
Also yes, right? And so people have to keep that in mind, that RWBY is a show where it was sort of like, we are going to show you powerful women, right? Like, that was sort of the basis for it. And I'm not saying that the guys don't matter or shouldn't get any, but I'm just saying that, it makes sense that they'd sort of go for the girls.
In the first someone broke it down by lines by gender, and in the first 3 volumes, I think a majority of the, like 70% or 75% of the lines are all spoken by women. So it's a very, like, female-centric show.
Yeah, and so of course there would be more,
but there are still some, like, very canonically very out there in the manga, which is, like, canon material. Scarlet is gay.
Yeah. And Miles also just said it. Like, he also just said it himself as well, Miles or Carrie.
And also, like,
double confirmed. Crow?
Maybe.
Crow, Clover, listen, y'all are getting it too, alright? And so don't worry about that. And so, yeah, that's the only other thing is, like, I don't want them to dead name May in the show. I don't want them, and I don't, like, you can probably talk about this more, Hunter. I don't want them to show transition photos of May in the show. Even if Henry, like, I don't want to say it would be understandable if Henry has them, but even if Henry's an asshole and he's at the dinner party, and it would make logical sense, I guess. You understand what I mean? Like, even if they could, I would not want them to. I don't think that's a wise idea.
With this, it becomes difficult because RWBY's really kind of screwed themselves.
Yeah.
By creating this idea that it's an entirely, like, egalitarian, gender-neutral society.
Yeah, or gender-equal
society. Right? Because I would argue that gender and the sort of normative ideas about gender enforces homophobia and enforces transphobia.
Yeah.
It's the idea that, like, you are a man, you need to date women because that's what men do. Or it's like, you cannot be a man, you were born a woman, you can only ever be a woman. I think those ideas have a lot to do with, like,
or even just, like, more subtle things where it's like, you're a man, you have to act manly, and it's sort of a stereotype that gay people are very feminine or effeminate, right? And so it's one of those things where it's like, that shouldn't exist in Remnant. Like, a man shouldn't necessarily be judged for, like, a gay man shouldn't be judged for, like, acting in an effeminate way, right? Nobody should.
Because that also, we don't see that occur. Like, no one ever looks at RWBY or Pyrrha or any of the women and assume, like, oh, they are they're going to be less warriors.
Yeah.
They're going to be less good warriors.
There have been some times
less deadly.
where they have slipped up with, oh, well,
Yes.
I'm not above hitting a girl. Like,
Yes.
Sun says that.
Mhm.
And you wouldn't have that in your mind because that it sort of implies you're not above hitting a girl, and so other men wouldn't hit a girl.
But why if you're equal?
Why if it's equal? Or Jean saying damsel in distress.
Yes.
That
Why would
idea
that
shouldn't
trope
exist either, right? And so they
yeah.
have slipped up and they're human, right? They don't
Yeah.
realize their own subconscious, and nobody does, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like, Hunter, I am entirely aware of all of the things around me, right? No. You know what I mean?
That becomes difficult when you try to transgender people, and we see the difference between a different RWBY show, RT show, Genlock,
Yeah.
and with RWBY, because in Genlock we have Valentina and Val, who are gender neutral, or not, gender fluid,
yeah.
yes. And so with them, they exist in a world where transphobia exists, and people are generally ignorant on ideas of non-binary.
Also, it's implied
identity.
that the Union, the war
Yes.
people, it's been a minute, like,
Yeah, it's implied
wanna
that the Union are
murder
like,
trans people. That's
yes.
basically what they're trying to get at
And
in
that's
the show,
and
right?
that's that's based in our reality. So when someone has to sit people down, when Val and I guess Cammy also have to sit people down and explain what
and talk
gender
to
fluid
Kazu
is,
and stuff, right?
that makes sense for that world. It doesn't make sense for a world where no one really views gender in a normative way, to then have to sit someone down and explain to them what a transgender person is.
And
Presumably, they would just be like, okay, you're a
I
girl now.
understand why people are like, well, RT only said it on Twitter, they're cowards, they won't do it in the actual show, but she's in the actual show, and if you are a perceptive viewer, you can deduce that she is a trans person.
Because
right? You know what I mean?
It's based off of...
It was obvious to us anyway,
You can
I'm just saying.
deduce that because it's based off of the precedent set by the sailor, the first mate, that, the actor or the performer of the voice, their character shares the same gender identity as the voice actor. And so with the first mate, the voice actor, they were non-binary. And so the first mate is non-binary. With May's voice actress is Kaden Jensen, who I'm familiar with because she used to be an Achievement Hunter. She was on No, which is now Inside Gaming. So I'm familiar with her voice, and I was able to, I think you can see in the reaction, realize
that's Kaden Jensen, and I was
so
like...
if you're aware of this precedent, then it like, oh yeah, she's trans. But with people being like, oh, you would never know that they're trans, like that's kind of the point.
You know what I mean?
We live amongst you. We hide in the shadows. You'll never find us.
There's one in every family. And
And so my thing is more like, here's the thing with people like, we would never know otherwise. People say that about Ilya and about Coco. And so I'm like, if you think that you wouldn't know otherwise unless they tell you on Twitter, you're also not paying attention.
Yes.
The reason why they have to
Especially for
confirm it,
Ilya.
right? The reason why they need to go out of their way to confirm it is because people are stupid purposely. I would say purposely stupid.
Some people
right?
are just ignorant, and that's fine. Some people are purposefully, willingly ignorant.
Yeah, and
it's-
so
yeah,
with
whatever.
Coco, for example, there was like, but she slapped Yasuhashi's ass, so she can't be gay. You know what I mean? There was this whole thing after the Team Coffee book came out where people were sort of like, oh, but she could just mean that about Velvet in this way. She could just mean that about Glinda in that way. Like, no, you're being purposefully obtuse.
Ilya
Sometimes,
doesn't want to be Blake's girlfriend. She just wants to be Blake's friend. She just wants to be respected by Blake. It's like, no, that is not, she's blushing. That is not what's happening right here. Yeah, I think some people are purposefully obtuse, which is really
Coco doesn't want to fuck Glinda. She just respects Glinda very much as her teacher. Like, I don't know. It's just so weird because if the roles were reversed and Coco was saying that about Ozpin, okay? Let's just say Ozpin because I don't think Oobleck or Port are very attractive, no offense. But say Coco was like, yeah, that Ozpin with his cane and his necktie and you know what I mean? And she was basically, crushing on Ozpin. People would be like, oh yeah, she's crushing on Ozpin, right? But in the lady killer stuff and stuff like that she breaks girls' hearts, people were like, she breaks girls' hearts because she steals their man. And I'm like, no, you're being dumb on purpose. And so that is really why they have to go on Twitter and confirm it. It's not because they want to be like J.K. Rowling and get points for something they didn't do. It's because they're doing it. People on Twitter or wherever are theorizing that this is the answer, right? People were like, May is trans. Like, that was the theory, right? That was the discussion. People already knew. They just had to confirm it for us to get people to shut the fuck up. Right.
And I would say that the thing also with J.K. Rowling is that she announced that years after the books were entirely finished. This was 3 days after this character gets her first line. Like, they're not doing the same thing J.K. Rowling did. Secondly, J.K. Rowling, like, the actors that play Dumbledore are straight men. Like, May was played by a transgender woman. Like, that's something that's so rare.
Yeah.
Even when they do have transgender representation in media, so rare to actually get a transgender person to play that character.
And that's the other reason why I think that it should be posted and it should be celebrated. You know what I mean? Because it's not just, like, we want brownie points for, like, having a trans character. It's like
there was someone,
she posted it for a reason. I'm sure she's very happy that she got to sort of do this and give this representation to people. It's something to be celebrated because
it's a very rare
even
thing.
in anime, when we have trans characters, right? Like, there's the My Hero Academia character and stuff like that. I don't think they're necessarily played by trans actors, and so it's not necessarily like we want the points because like we made a trans character, right? There's something to be celebrated because I've never heard of a anime character that has been played by someone who is trans in a popular anime. Does that make sense? And the character has also been trans, right? So that in itself is something to sort of celebrate, right? And I kind of get where people are coming from, whereas it's like, but if you keep announcing these things, it becomes sort of abnormal. But I just don't think that that's true. You know what I mean? There's a difference between celebrating something and making a spectacle out of it and sort of treating people like they're animals in a petting zoo.
Especially
that's not
when
what's
it's
happening
undeserved, because I think it is deserved. It's a rare thing to have a trans character played by a trans, person. I would secondarily say the reason why we don't celebrate every time there's a straight character is because that would take up a lot of time, because 98% of all characters are straight and are heterosexual and cisgendered, and it is rare to have in like something that is mainstream, that isn't like fan fiction or like an indie published book, trans characters done well as well. Because, and here's another thing, like people's like, well, how will we know that they're trans? It's like, I don't really want them to I would love like a book kind of like what they did with Team Coffee that explores the history of the Happy Huntresses. I'd be crazy about that. I'm not interested in like Henry showing like May's like dead name or old photos of May. I'm not interested in that because, and especially for cisgendered people, the most interesting part of trans people to cisgendered people are the transition.
Yes, that is driving me crazy.
The idea
right now.
that you go from like one, that's the only interesting thing. I would think
that is now the most interesting thing about May, and that is why she needs backstory to people now.
Yeah, and that's what they want. Like, no, I think the most interesting thing about May is that she was once an incredibly wealthy person who gave away all of her privilege. I mean, she's related to
Marigold.
So we assume she was an incredibly wealthy person that gave away all of that wealth to ostensibly like work for a community and become a rebel. I think that's a more interesting part of her history than just her being trans. Focusing on that just seems like it's unnecessary, and it's not the most interesting part of being trans. It's being human is the most. It's being just like any other human with interesting aspects of their personality.
Yeah, and so that's what's really annoying me with people now, like, that are saying, like, oh, well, we need to see this, we need to see that. No.
You can
stop it.
And also, like, in the world that they build up for RWBY, as we discussed earlier, there's not a lot of room for, May to talk about being trans because it's such a normal thing. It would be like, I don't know, me talking about how I have 2 arms.
Yeah,
it's just like, well, like a lot of people do.
Yeah, lots of people have 2 arms, Hunter.
I know it's entirely, or like breathing oxygen. It's just like, yeah, we all kind of do it. It's totally normal. I would also say that with trans characters, there's a lot of like misery porn that people are interested in seeing, or being tortured, or having like terrible things happen, or like Henry being awful to her.
Yeah,
I don't really
like people want to see Henry be awful to her, and I don't know.
And I'm glad that, and I think that has to do with maybe the bury the gays I guess trope, the idea that gay people or queer people are just generally more tragic.
Here's the other thing, right? Like, I remember we got this comment, I think it was last year, like, it was a while ago, and they were like, I'll only be happy if Rooster Teeth kills off Saffron and Tara and Ilya, because gay people deserve to die, and they shouldn't be seen getting happy endings.
That was a
right?
real
Like,
thing
that
we
was
saw.
the whole thing. They shouldn't be happy, right? And so, I feel like it stems from that idea, too, is that if you're going to show gay people or trans people in media, you need to show them with some kind of tragic ending, because you point to it and say, see, don't be gay, don't be trans, or else that is what's gonna happen to you.
That dude was just like a religious nut job in our comments, but like generally speaking, I think people just view trans
I think
people
that's a more
tragic.
subconscious
Maybe
thing,
that's a more subconscious
is that
thing,
people
like,
want to
that's what you
see
get.
the misery, and I don't know why. Like, just leave it alone.
I don't know.
Stop it. It's like, this is a weird comparison, but it's like how Game of Thrones added a bunch of rape scenes that weren't in the books and stuff like that. It's like, you guys just want to, and like, I don't know. I get that it's like, oh, it's medieval time, but it's also not, right? And so it's like, no, you did it because people like to watch, like, it's all very
misery
strange.
Porn, and I like that RWBY has gone against the grain and have had just like an interesting trans character, and I'm really glad that happened. I think they have a long history of having interesting queer characters, and hopefully they continue to do that. This was a good one. I think, generally speaking, like, really quality stuff out of RWBY.
I thought you meant our video. I was like, it is a good one. Anyway, I'm just kidding. But yeah, that is all from us. I hope that you guys enjoyed, and we will see you guys later. Bye.